This is Kings Clubland, our exploration of King's Cross as the epicenter for rave culture in the 80s, 90s and noughties. Going back to the iconic clubs Bagley's, The Cross and The Key, funded by Heritage for Lottery, 30 young people unearthed some of the most exciting sounds and musical innovators of that era, as well as first-hand stories from people who lived it.
Well, I owned Bagley's for 6 years. Prior to me, someone else owned it. So a guy called Nigel Askew, his father had co-owned it with another guy called Terry, and his friends were doing illegal raves, and he asked his dad if he could put the raves into the warehouse, Bagley's, and hence it then became a sort of like semi-official sort of like venue. As it was on the King's Cross goods site, it was an environmental problem to a lot of neighbours, so the police basically turned a blind eye to it. After a couple of years and it was successful, then they went for a licence and it became a licensed premises. And that was, as I said, probably for a good 10 years before I took it over. So a lot of their stuff was illegal raves in the early stages. Then a lot of the promoters were then looking for legal clubs because their venues were being closed down. And then it sort of like became regular promoters, people like Philip Salom, who's a friend of Boy George. They started doing regular events there. So it became more professional.
If you think we mobilise a lot of people, and a lot of this stuff was under the radar because a lot of the venues weren't licensed. So you think about some of the big raves that were happening, getting 40,000 people in a place in 1 hour without promoting the address, without social media, without mobile phones. You think, how can that happen? And that was part of the adventure, actually. It's part of the mystique of the night. But so in some ways, you know, you think that technology has made it easier to promote, but I think it also means that the competition's greater and people were bombarded with come to this party, come to that event. We had something a little bit unique at the time, a little bit special. So rather than finding people to come to us, people sort of found us. So it's a very different culture. And then I think as time moved on, and obviously, you know, to coincide with music and house music, there was a subculture of drug taking. You know, you can't dismiss that. And, you know, for the people that were involved in it genuinely were not gangsters or, you know, people we knew we were just party people. But once that element became more evident and, you know, the darker elements came in, you know, with security, with, you know, people trying to control that, then it became very, very difficult. And a lot of very young promoters got driven out of the business. So it had its own challenges, but right at the beginning, it was a wonderful time.
Although the police turned a blind eye, some local residents didn't. Contemporary reports said if King's Cross were human, it would have crow's feet, broken veins, a beer belly, stretch marks, and a filthy cat. It was clear that not everyone enjoyed the area's night.
Right now I'm on the roof of Bagley Studio.
It was, okay, so I'm 15, I'm underage. I've gone with some older friends of mine, blagged our way in, and it's probably one of the most scariest moments of my life because I don't know what to expect. I've never been anywhere like that before. The queue to get in was ginormous. And you go behind, you know, you pay your money, you get a stamp. You've got a very cursory search. I'd never been searched before. I'm trying to look really normal, like I know what I'm doing, like I'm fitting in, because I'm terrified someone's going to ask me my date of birth and I'm going to flap and get it wrong. And then you can just hear this bass line just throbbing, and it's like the walls are shaking. And there's loads of people rushing in and out, and you're just trying to stay focused on your friends because you don't want to lose them. And you're getting closer and closer to this noise. And then all of a sudden, there's like these curtains in front of you, and your friends kind of pull you through, and there's just this ginormous room in front of you. And it's so loud, and it's heaving with people and bodies and light and movement. And in the distance, you can see like this raised platform, and there's all these strobe lights behind one guy, and you could just about see headphones on and an arm in the air, and he's like some messiah, and everybody is paying homage to him. And you feel like you've walked into a cult for a minute because you think everybody understands what's going on but you. And then slowly, as you look around, you realise you're in a room of about 1,000 people that are all dancing to exactly the same beat at exactly the same moment in exactly the same place at exactly the same time. And it's one of the most memorable sensory experiences I've ever had in my life.
Well, it was just pure hedonism, really. It's like, you know, you got in, and you didn't hang about, really. Everyone was just dancing. I mean, around the early 90s, it was absolutely ram-packed, and you just went to dance. You kind of had a purpose, that was it. And then at the end of the night, or in the early hours of the morning, you'd sort of stumble out of there and you'd see people, and there'd be after parties and stuff. Sometimes with, you know, you just meet loads of different people, and the vibe was really, really good. I mean, some people that have documented this said that it got ruined when the gangsters, drug dealers got involved, and they found out that ecstasy was a good way of making money, and then the quality went down and stuff. I mean, this is the reality. But my experience of that is that the gangsters, if you want to call them that, actually joined us and loosened up and started wearing the same clothes and got involved and found, some of them found, you know, majority of them found a new way of existing, new way of, you know, that wasn't violent and wasn't money motivated for a period, and then obviously it becomes a big business, because where there's money there's trouble.
You know, that was a special time, 88, 89, the summer of love, and you know, it was a very, very great time to live in England, and a very oppressive time under Margaret Thatcher and all that kind of stuff. And out of all that, you always get a movement that is hedonistic. They just want to have a great time and do something creative and do it on their own, and that's what people were doing. So when they came into that club, they were ready to express themselves and express their joy at being in a place with a lot of like-minded people, really.
How's it? Well, we were all really young. I mean, you've got to remember that this was like 30 years ago, so I was like still I was 21. So nobody ever had a plan. You know, we were just living for the day, and we loved our music, and we liked to dance with like-minded people. So it wasn't, you know, so the feeling wasn't one of a plan. It was just like, great, you know, we found this. It just felt fresh and daring. I mean, we'd come out of Thatcher's Britain, you know, it was of the time. It was like, we called it a perfect storm. You know, the music was there, the appetite was there. There was a lot of, people felt very disenfranchised. There was a lot of unemployment. There was a lot of angst amongst youth, and suddenly, you know, people just could come in and party together. And I think what was really important about that era, which I think was my feeling, is it was the first time it was very inclusive. Everybody, it was a melting pot of everyone. It didn't matter whether you were black or white, straight, gay, you know, rich, poor. If you were a party person, you'd come and party together. And I think that was the real defining difference of what happened during the rave scene, and especially around Bagley's at the time, that where before it'd been quite compartmentalised.
We used to hit Soho, the gay scene in Soho. There was a bar called Mantos, which I think is GAY now or something. It's on top of Old Compton Street. We used to go there, get a drink, get discount flyers, head over to the Cross. Sometimes we'd meet people at the garage on the corner. That was always a great meeting spot. And then you'd head down. It was always exciting, heading down the little road and into the dark area of what is now outside St Martin's and the Art University. So yeah, it's just that walk. You always got a bit of excitement going, and
it was, when I first walked, everyone's together. That's the main thing, and that's what was the brilliant thing about being somewhere like that, because it was the only place that was open after 3 o'clock. So all the West End clubs would close, all the kind of out-of-town clubs would close, but King's Cross still had the licenses to go on right through the morning. So you'd get people coming out of the R&B clubs, people coming out of the dance clubs, people coming out of the pubs or wherever, the gay clubs, all just ascending onto King's Cross, because it was the one place that you could rave late, you could keep the party going. So that was the most unique thing, I think, about like Bagley's, the Cross, the Quay, or even Canvas. The unique thing about it was that's where all the tribes met, and you would rave in the same place as a drag queen, or as a dreadlocks, or as a happy hardcore fan, or, you know, a guy from Manchester in a fisherman's cap who liked happy hardcore.
I mean, the thing is that, you know, it's all been gentrified now. I mean, when I moved down there, I mean, I was probably your age, 22, 23, and it was very much a sort of like a real edgy, run-down, sort of like a dodgy part of London, full of prostitutes, drug taking. I mean, I don't know if you know the area, but York Way and Goods Way, I mean, there would be lines of prostitutes just on the streets. And because it was before the clubs actually went in, it was sort of like very, very run down. And it only operated during the day as being a commercial depot for transport. So of course at night, that area was overrun with, you know, I'm talking about street users and sort of like prostitutes. So and it was pretty miserable. So when the rave scene came into there, that actually moved all of those women and those drug users on, because because a lot of people were coming to the area. There was a lot of activity. So as I said, I would imagine for the people who were actually living in the area at the time, although there was a downside to, you know, there being the entertainment going right way till 6 in the morning, sometimes after parties to during lunchtime. There was a lot of problems also with Bagley's at the time, because they'd done a thing called the church. And on Sundays they used to have a lot of Australian backpackers, and they caused a lot of damage. So a lot of the residents probably would have been affected then. But I think with the regeneration and perhaps what the club scene brought to the area, it was a progression that sort of like needed to happen for it to be where it is. So I suppose the residents now, if there's any of them still left there, who've seen that sort of like, say, 40-year transition, can only think that what's happening now is for the better. Yeah? But yeah, the atmosphere, I said, I've been open for about 6 months, and I stood on the dance floor one day and then just looked around, and yeah, the tingles go up your back. You see all those people jumping up and down, you know? And you think, wow, yeah, I created this. Prior to 86, 87, and before ecstasy exploded, people just done the regular things, you know. Clubbing was something you might have gone to once every couple of months. A lot of the stuff was just predominantly chant music or disco or stuff like that. The DJ was just a guy that you ask him, excuse me, do you know this one, can you go and put it on? You know, there was no real big emphasis on DJs. And then when dance music broke, I suppose 87, I can remember it because I was living in Old Street at the time. And then suddenly going to my first rave, you know, and thinking, wow, Jesus Christ, I've never experienced it. It was like a revolution. It was like being taken up to Mars. You know, I've never experienced anything like it. And as I said, at the time then, it was much a very, very small, there was no mobile phones, there was no texting people, there was no emailing, there was nothing at all. So we would all meet people, bump into guys in a pub, you go to certain places for a drink, and they go, oh, look, there's a party over at Fulham or Brixton or this or whatever. And then, you know, you would go to that and then hear about the next one, it'd be a week or so after.
I would like to say there isn't a club, a well-established club, from 1984 up until the current date, 2018, that me and my brother, because I'm Bobby from Bobby and Steve, that we haven't worked in. Because we don't just DJ, we do events as well. We're promoters and DJs. But we've DJed all over London, all over England, nearly all over the world. Back in the day then, not so much now, when we wasn't working, or if we was working, then them days you'd have a lot of gigs up north. On the way back home, everyone would just meet at Bagley's.
There was no real technology during that time. No internet, no tickets on your phone. So ravers had to rely on hand-printed flyers to stay up to date with upcoming club nights, meaning that the promoters had an important role, as they were really the only way of getting the crowds to the clubs.
Yeah, my name's Danny Terry, and my history with Bagley's Cross, the whole complex, is promotion through flyers. Hence named Flying Squad, and we gave out the first ever flyer and the last ever flyer, and literally spent every weekend from when it was open to when it was shut at this great complex of a Mecca. Right, okay, with the Cross, it was very much a house venue, so you'd have very glam, sort of small flyers. Typically, back in that sort of day, was have a picture of a woman or a nice sort of, you know, outfit sort of thing. That would be a sort of house flyer. And when we was distributing flyers for Bagley's, obviously it was very much a, so stuff like the Cross would have been flyers like this, nice sort of small ones, as you can see. Sort of lovely little ones, glossy, sort of nice small ones. While if you was doing Bagley's, then the flyers would be sort of, you know, big, sort of massive, because they were sort of hardcore, sort of drum and bass, breakbeat, hardcore promoters that went into Bagley's on the Friday.
So I was a nightclub promoter in the 80s, a lot of West End clubs, and about 1987, 88, a lot of people started to play some house, well, not a lot of people, some people started to play house music, and there was like a shift of, a cultural shift, I think, about the way people were clubbing, and it was very underground. And utter fate, I happened to be also doing some work on a TV show, and I went down to Bagley's, and the guy that was running at the time, that owned it, said to me, we got chatting, he said, well, what do you know about raves? And this was about 88, because 87 things had started to bubble a bit, and 88, and I said, well, you know, yeah, it's like, you know, there's parties, and there's a little bit of wrangling you have to do to get licenses and things like that. And I said, why? And he said, well, come upstairs and look at the film studios, which I hadn't clues there. And I went upstairs, and it was like a gift to a rave promoter, and that's how it all started.
Once the venue had become a licensed nightclub, the Key became a more professional performance spot, with artists like Boy George making appearances.
With, obviously, back in the 90s, you know, social media was not about. Internet was just about starting. So yeah, I mean, the main form of advertising really was through flyers, getting it to the masses, and you was getting it to your core crowd, because, you know, you was getting them at the end of the night, like-minded people. But with the Cross and Bagley's, it was just, I've never seen anything like it, really. I mean, just for units, you could, you know, just for people really as well, it was just a Mecca. I mean, you'd turn up first of all, and you'd think it was an Oliver Twist sort of workhouse, the whole sort of look of it, and then you just come in a bit deeper. No cars were allowed. It was probably the only venue as well that literally had a walk up where it was on people's lips. You know, where was we going to go on Saturday night? Oh, we go Cross Bagley's, regardless of what event was on there as well. You know, it had the power. Just some people didn't even know what was on there. They just knew it was Cross Bagley's, and you'd get 1,000 people just walk up just alone. You know, that's sensational. You know, very rare that you'd get that, and probably won't get it again. Really, you know, like that. You know.
But what I was impressed by these places and Bagley's as well is the actual size of them. So when I was going out in the mid to late 80s in Middlesbrough, yeah, it was like a small nightclub, one little tiny dance floor, probably about the same size as this. And then yeah, coming down to London and going to it did feel like warehouse parties, which is what house music was all about.
Life in the UK wasn't easy during those times, but the club scene was a secure place to let loose and escape reality. People from all areas, races and backgrounds came together and became one. This is what made it unique. Spreading the word and creating hype would have been hard, but it was a huge job for all involved. Imagine not being able to promote your event online, on Shooks or Ticketmaster. Instead, they used flyers, adverts and word of mouth. People didn't really know what to expect when they got there, but the clubs were always packed and the atmosphere was like nothing you had ever experienced.
On the corner was a petrol station. It was only pulled down in the last few years. And that was actually the petrol station where you used to go to get a phone call from the phone box to tell you to go to another place on the services, and then to go to the big illegal, all the big raves that we used to do. That was the starting point for everyone in London. So that area of Bagley's and the Egg and the Cross and all those places was kind of an epicentre for that club scene. I mean, it was because it was quite derelict and dark, so it was perfect, you know. And Bagley's was an amazing club.
This was one of the first ever flyers at Bagley's. This was Philip Salon's Mud Club.
Is it like a mask?
Yeah, it is. It's called the Mask Ball, 18th century Mask Ball.
Oh,
so obviously,
and people would actually wear it.
Yeah, I mean, Philip Salon. He was originally, when they done the Mud Club. You know, it was a house event and very glam as well. And literally thousands would turn up. The atmosphere, where you had two different atmospheres, which was so strange, but yet they worked so well. You had the Cross, which was house, so you'd have a bit reserved, but they still went for it, leather trousers and shirts, you know, while you'd have Bagley's, which was just completely different, you know, literally people ripping their shirts off and just physically just going for it, a raw atmosphere, and it was all new as well, and it was just, you know, just about going there and just letting your inhibitions go and just having a good time, forgetting about everything, worry about your Monday on Monday, you know. It was just phenomenal. Probably an atmosphere and just a connection that you never see so many people in one spot, and it was electric. I mean, the sweat would you could, when the Cross was so small, you could put your hand on it and it would just, you know, just drip. And Bagley's, yeah, sensational. Probably atmospheres you'd never get again, really, in Clubland. A Tuesday night, the 20th of December, which is a crazy night. A Tuesday, it goes out on a Tuesday, but it was Sasha and John Digweed doing a special back-to-back set, which was unheard of in London, and made that pilgrimage on the Tuesday, and it was just phenomenal. Just seeing two gods DJ like Silk was just a big part of that, you know. To experience that is just brilliant. Yeah, no, we literally just received the flyers physically from the promoters. They'd literally come down to my office. I send them in the post. We would then we would then put them. We had like a collating machine. We'd have to then collate them together to put them in a plastic bag, because obviously it got silly in the sense there could be 40 different flyers, 40 different promoters wanting to target the Cross and Bagley's, because you'd get 2,500, 3,000 people just in one night, you know. So we would put them inside a plastic bag, which would have our own insert around it called the Flying Squad Get Smart Pack, and inside that was all the various different flyers. So, back then as well, obviously the internet, mobile phones were not about, you know, so the only form of communication was your flyers, you know. So people used to literally just come out, hold their hands out and get their flyers. It was like the Sunday papers, you know. You got your flyers, you then get in your car, you'd go home, have your chill out bit, open up your pack and go through your flyers, find out what you're going to do next week or the week after. Simple as that.
There are split opinions on the redevelopment of the area. Some angry that the culture is being removed from King's Cross and its history is being hidden. Some excited for the changes and what's to come. They believe that the current period is the best that the area has ever been.
Well, you know, you get nostalgic, and so, you know, sort of, so it felt bittersweet when it started, because it was like, oh, they're taking our place, you know, our place to party. Now it's going to be very corporate, and we're going to lose something. But actually, the developers themselves, I think, have been really responsible. I mean, those buildings are listed and they are beautiful, so there is a lot of heritage value, but I think they've done it really, really responsibly. Whether it could ever really become a centre of music and breaking new music and breaking new talent, I don't know whether that could live side by side with residential and commercial in the way it is now. So in a way it's brilliant, you know, absolutely they've done a wonderful thing, but there's a little bit of sadness as a London in general, because I think it's just harder and harder for young people to go out and have that experience again, because there's just not the places to do it. So I can't think, so you know, for me there's nostalgia, but appreciation, but also a little bit of sadness for the next generation that they'll never experience that time or be able to create it.
And the clubs were really amazing, because what happened as well is in 2008 there was like a big economic crash, you know, the credit crunch, no one had any money. So we didn't have any money, and we couldn't afford to clean out the clubs, so it was like someone had just left, or like a virus had hit and like, you know, exterminated everyone. Because you used to go in there, and you go in there with Alan, and there'd be all the VIP passes would be in the changing rooms. They'd have like crates of beer behind the bar. All the decks are gone, all the kind of expensive equipment gone. Pretty much everything else was still there. So it was kind of like there was like some inflatable palm tree outside. It was just like loads of stuff there. So it kind of had this like eerie, evocative kind of feel to it, quite melancholic.
No, the only time we got problems with shutting the place down was from railway groups. You know, so over the years they objected about us redeveloping the area. But as I used to say, you know, I worked here, we saved the buildings, because half the buildings around, you know, the cold drops and whatever, would have fallen to bits, you know, with the old lead roofs, the leaks and all that lot. So the development and all that lot has saved the buildings. So it went to court and all that lot to get it through, and we got it through and all that. So it has saved the buildings. The buildings are still here. Yeah, so it's saved that, and it saved the heritage right from being cold drops, bottle warehouse, nightclubs. So you go around the town, you know, and you say, you know, let's go away on holiday and, you know, abroad, and start talking to someone and say, oh yeah, I work Kings Cross where Bagley is, and you say, oh, if I give you an address, can you send the tickets, you know, can you send us, get free tickets and all that lot. But it still comes round. I walk people around, journalists and all that lot. I won't say what they said, but they say, oh yeah, I remember this is Bagley's, wasn't it, you know. We're creating retail units, so it's all been open, and it opens in a couple of months as retail units. The tenants now have been there fitting them out for shops, so we've cut it individual unit, made it individual units along there, so there is a lot of bin advertised and all that lot, who's going in there and who's whatever, so it will all be a retail destination area. You know, so like the cold drops, that was designed by Thomas Hemwick. It was designed because it is a great, you know, listed building, and there was so much in it. So everything the whole site was the master plan, like was in the model. Now, as it goes along, each building goes along, they build a new model of what the building's going to look like. But first of all, it's just white blocks and green area for parks. So they do the master plan first, then once they got the whole planning of the whole site, then it's individual plots going for planning for individual plots. Then get the design of the building, how we want it to look.
Oh, well, I think it's going to be really good for the community, because I think, you know, it's going to obviously provide jobs. I hope it's not going to be the gentrification, which is probably likely that happens in a lot of inner cities where they get, you know, urbanised gentrification, because then there becomes the have and have-nots, and the people that use those facilities for years might not be able to afford to, or, you know, it suddenly becomes, you know, it's progress, but it also maybe it's a bit exclusive sometimes. And I think the developers are trying to work hard to have arts, and generally have arts and culture, and, you know, especially with St Martin's being there. So I hope they don't miss that element of youth that was really what created a vibrancy to that area.
DJing in King's Cross has changed quite a lot since the 90s. I mean, for one, the area has become very gentrified. I mean, you can see good things about that, and you can see bad things about that. When I first started DJing here, there was probably a lot more, it was probably a bit rougher. So there's probably more, or maybe it's undercover now and they're still going on, but there's more evidence of like people taking drugs on the street, and there was like, not a very nice thing to talk about, but there's prostitutes and people like that, you know, and King's Cross had that reputation back in those days. And I think they probably, you know, it's cleaned up a little bit, well, quite a lot, to be honest with you. And I'd say in general that's probably a good thing. Sometimes that's bad, because sometimes the people who originally lived here can't afford to live here anymore. So you could say that side of it's not great. But yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, look, it does look amazing now. And I'd say the venues are probably a lot more plush.
Well, you know what? It's the same with everywhere. You know, after such a brilliant time, the Hacienda closed. Bagley's. It's very sad. I mean, we lost a lot of clubs actually in London. I mean, Crossrail took about 3 or 4 clubs. It took the Astoria, Velvet Underground, the Milk Bar. It's a tough one really, because, you know, I suppose something did need doing to King's Cross, but it would have been nice if they could have preserved Bagley's in those plans. But people who plan areas, municipal planners, don't usually go to clubs. So I felt sad, very sad. Listen, there's many weird and wonderful memories, because there was lots of weird and wonderful people, really weird people, but great people, creative people. And you know, rather than one memory, that's what I take from it. And also, when you came out of Bagley's and the sun was rising over the big gas tanks, you know, the big gas things in King's Cross and over the station, it was a beautiful walk to go and get a cup of coffee and some breakfast, you know, because it was quite magical. Yeah, it was a bit like a film set, even though it was quite grimy, you know.
It was a sad feeling, because just to know, you know, being part of something that was, you know, amazing for a lot of DJs, not just the clubbers as well. It's, you know, the clubber side of it is important as well as the DJs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was a sad thing, because you're thinking, oh shit. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of London. You had the clubs. Them days you had Limelights, you know, on Shaftesbury Avenue. Things were in town. I mean, we used to do clubs on Shaftesbury Avenue, for instance. So you had a lot of the clubs as in West End. Do you know what I mean? But again, Bagley's was in the underground side of things. So, and there wasn't a lot of that about. So on that side of it, it was sad. Less bookings, less money. So it was sad. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But for club and culture, it was yeah, the end of that era. Do you know what I mean? Because it wasn't just Bagley's and across the whole. You'd go there, you know what I mean, in the whole area. It'd be like going, even though there's only 2-3 clubs there, it'd be like, you know, going to Westfield, for instance, shopping. But you're going to a club environment, club, and you'd meet people that you didn't even know was in that queue, going to that club, to the Cross and whatever. So the whole thing was just you know, just amazing. So it was sad. Things move on. Yeah. The boys are still doing well. Do you know what I mean?
Had a fantastic. It was a really, really creative time, fantastic time. Met loads of people that I probably wouldn't have met if I'd stayed in Brighton. So you know, that taught me that, you know, to travel around. I got to go around the world and do my thing with the bands and stuff. So yeah, Bagley's was a massive part of the scene. Really, really popular. Some brilliant nights on down there. So
yeah, just seeing favourite DJs, meeting up with friends. It was always a good night out. And I went to a collaboration event in Bagley's and then Canvas later. It was run by some of our favourite clubs off the gay scene, which was Trade, Fiction, DTPM. I think one was called Faced, which was a bit of a harder night. Yeah, so it was always a massive event. I mean, security would be on the street. You'd have to show your tickets on the street. You wouldn't even get down into the road leading into Bagley's. Yeah, it was again. It was an all-nighter. Got there late, left very late again. On to another party probably.
With a new shopping centre opening where the old clubs used to live, with an amazing fashion school around the corner, King's Cross is slowly becoming a new area with little trace of its past.
It was great because you were playing to a crowd that really appreciated what you played, even though I was from Manchester, which in those days, because you had no internet and no real communication in club scenes, you know, you could have one city having a different club scene than another, and sometimes you could arrive in another city and they just didn't get it. But Bagley's, they always got it. It was great. Yeah.
It was just free. It was nobody. You know, you went to go to the toilet. It took you an hour. You'd say because you'd be just chatting to people on the way there, on the way back. you know, you didn't want to leave your favourite tune and go to the toilet because in case you never come back on again that night or that morning, because trade was from 4 AM till about 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. So, and yeah, I soon learnt not to go out on the Saturday night before it because you wouldn't have the stamina to stay.
Sometimes you could not explain that atmosphere, you couldn't bottle it, you know, when 1,000 people on a dance floor having the best time of their lives. Makes me go goose pimply now.
So there you have it, an end of an era. Over the past 6 months, we have discovered so many interesting facts and stories from people of that time. Thank you to Heritage Lottery for supporting our journey, for all the people who took part in our documentary. Although the clubs have gone, the legacy remains.